Consistent self-improvement, everybody. You are now listening to American gypC podcast. I am your host, Classic, and I am here with my co-host,
gypC. And today we have Kelsey Walker. She is the founder of a nonprofit called From the Green Desk, and the author of Face Everything and Rise. Welcome to the show, Kelsey.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me, guys.
It's a pleasure having you. To get started, I'd like to ask, and also for the listeners, I'd like to ask, where are you from and where do you live now, and how did you get to writing a book and starting a nonprofit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am currently located in Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay.
I got here because the first 10 or so years of my life, I actually lived in Kansas City. And the second 8, I actually lived in Chicago. And yeah, got to experience all the good things that big city life had to offer, and really fell in love with nonprofits and women's and reproductive rights as well. I became a little rebel with that. And then my dad played football at K-State, so I didn't have much of a choice of where I was going to go to school. So I came on down to Manhattan, Kansas, in the middle of nowhere, much different than Chicago, to go to school. And along the way, I worked in New Mexico doing medical search and rescue, met my husband. We had a couple of kids, and we ended up back in Kansas City in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. With my book, how I came around to writing that was while we were in Salina, Kansas, again, out in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. We were pregnant with our daughter, Hope. When we found out at 17 weeks, she had osteogenesis imperfecta type 2, which is the lethal version of brittle bone disease. So all of the bones in her body were broken. Her ribs were breaking and crushing in on her heart and her lungs, and she was suffering. And there was a chance that her condition could take my life too. So my husband and I made the difficult decision to have an abortion at 18 weeks. And as if losing a child isn't hard enough, the laws that surround clinics make it incredibly hard on a woman going through the process. I was asked 6 times if I wanted to continue with the process during that day. I also had to not be completely put under for the procedure. They used midazolam, which is a drug that makes you sleepy, but it is supposed to help you forget the procedure. I remember everything, and part of it was every time I would get sleepy and fall asleep, I would stop breathing. So they had to keep waking me up during the procedure. So I remember the whole thing, and it really, it was at no fault of the practitioners. They were very kind, very loving people. They gave me a card with my daughter's footprints on it and gave me a blanket that they held her in. But the fact of the matter is that because they weren't in a hospital, they couldn't put me all the way out. Because they couldn't put me all the way out, they also couldn't let my husband be back in the room with me during the final stage of the procedure. And because of the laws, they kept asking and asking if I wanted to do it. Deep down in my heart, did I want to be doing that? No, but it was the best thing for me and for my child at the time. So, I precipitated post-traumatic stress disorder from it and went through a very dark time, but ultimately found the strength to rise. And through therapy and through EMDR training or therapy, really found the strength to get back up on my feet and start my nonprofit and write the book.
It's pretty
Quite.
crazy. I know
Yes.
it's pretty
A
shocking.
lot.
It is a lot to say. But can you tell us a little bit more about your nonprofit and what types of service you offer there?
Absolutely.
And then we're
So
gonna double back to
yeah,
to where
it's a lot to take in.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so my nonprofit, I based on part of the challenges with the procedure, which is that when you leave the clinic after you've had an abortion, you're given 4 phone numbers for support. You're given the suicide hotline, the abortion support hotline, which is a lot like the suicide hotline, a psychiatrist in Overland Park, which is about 3 hours away from where I lived, and telehealth wasn't really a thing yet. And then given the after hours phone number for the clinic, because if something were to go wrong, if I started having severe abdominal pain or started bleeding weird or something like that, if I went to an emergency room, they wouldn't know how to treat me because of the procedure that I just had. So that I had to go to the after hours clinic. And they said, don't stray from these 4 phone numbers, because if you do, it's going to be bad, because there's a lot of pro-life organizations out there that prey on women who are, who have had abortions or are thinking about it. And I got to the point where I needed extra support, and I strayed off the list, and I contacted what I thought was an abortion support group in my town. It was not. It was a pro-life organization that ambushed me at a church, and a pastor basically told me I was going to hell for what I did. And, after that, I wrote, sorry, it's kind of hard to lay it all out, but this past year, with everything that was going on with Texas and the heartbeat bill, I started writing my book. And because I started writing my book, women started reaching out to me saying, hey, I've had an abortion too, or I've lost a child too, I've lost a pregnancy. Can you help me? Can you coach me through this? And so From the Green Desk was born. From the Green Desk is a organization that does coaching as well as group therapy for women who have had abortions, lost children, or lost pregnancies. And the basis of it is peer-to-peer support, so that you're no longer screaming in silence around these losses. We also do a blog every week, and then hopefully getting a podcast off the ground at the end of March, but the end of March is coming pretty quickly. And then finally, launching at the end of April, we will be doing narrative meditation, where we will unpack someone's grief or trauma layer by layer and teach them how to write out and release into the world their trauma and their own story.
How long was your path to happiness from or through this situation? How long would you take? Would you think it kind of it's taking you back to a point to at least you're happy enough to be able to be strong enough to start a foundation that it will help other people like you?
It took me 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. It took until taking EMDR therapy, and really basically what it does is, it's called EMDR therapy. It has to do with rapid eye movement. I don't remember the exact acronym for it, but basically the way it worked for me was that I still have flashbacks, but instead of the volume being turned all the way up, the volume's turned down on the vividness and on how loud the flashback is when it happens. And also helps desensitized triggers as well. So like one of the triggers for me is scissors. Scissors triggers me. So it helps get rid of that trigger. So with that helped me start writing the book. But what helped me finish the book and what really set me free was in October of 2021, I went to the Women's March in Kansas City, and I took a sign that said my baby was suffering and I almost died. We need this healthcare, read more from thegreendesk.com. And I had set up my website and stuff so people could read my story. And what I wasn't prepared for, I was prepared for people to gasp and to like be mean to me. What I wasn't prepared for was the outpouring of love from the women around me and the people around me, who held their hand to their chest and to their heart and hugged me, embraced me, pandemic be damned, and asked me about my sign, asked me about hope, and really healed me as a mom and as a person. So from that, that experience really helped set me free.
How I guess as far as the like I said, even the procedure of what you went through, and even like I said, that whole procedure, and you still remembering certain things. Has that been is that like a major case, even from the your situation, the whole I can't remember the name of the diagnosis with the breaking
Yeah,
of the bones. What's the name of it?
osteogenesis imperfecta type 2.
Okay.
It's a mouthful. It's brittle bone disease.
But how rare is that? And how many women are have to really make this decision on a scale that no one knows about, like myself?
Yeah, so hope was one in millions that this happens to. And while not every single case is the same for women that need this procedure, there are definitely women out there. There's actually a woman named Anna in Texas who's at 18 weeks, her water broke, and they did an ultrasound. Her baby was malformed and was dying, and she needed the same procedure that I had. But because of her being in the state of Texas now, she had to wait and hope that her body recognized that the pregnancy was ending and that she would miscarry. And she had to hope that she didn't get a massive infection that could kill her. So there are definitely more women out there than that people like to talk about that need, that this healthcare is a dire situation and it's vital for.
I think I was looking up reproductive scores in different states or cities, and Kansas was pretty low score on reproductive rights and things like that. Are there things that are making it hard for cases like yours?
Well, what is making it harder is, since the war with Russia and Ukraine has broken out, there have been 5 states that have passed legislation banning abortion past 6 weeks or past 15 weeks. I didn't even find out there was anything wrong with Hope until we were 17 weeks pregnant. So that would make it impossible for someone like me to get the procedure that they needed to save their own life and to end her suffering.
What states, as far as because I'm not really educated on as far as the matter of, or at least which states are legal or which states don't allow it.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah. So
educate me on that?
Idaho, Florida, um, Missouri, and there was a couple others. One of the Dakotas and another one are making moves in the opposite direction of reproductive health care. So, for instance, for Missouri, yes, they don't allow abortion in Missouri, but they are also making it a criminal offense to leave the state to have an abortion now. Kansas is also making moves to copycat the Texas bill as well. But there's an opposition that's trying to fundraise and fight it because of what's happened in Texas. Clinics are getting filled up in Oklahoma, which are in turn filling up in Kansas. And it's just causing a cascade effect in these other states. And it's not because, there's, women that all of a sudden need it. It's because people have needed it all along and now are having to travel farther for it.
What is the, I guess, one of the biggest stereotypes against the reason why it's such an issue with, as far as them?
Yeah, so the opposition likes to paint women who have abortions as these loose, slut shaming type of women that are just, going out and partying and getting pregnant and then needing an abortion the next day is the picture that they're painting. And if there are women out there like that, that's their business. But overwhelmingly, that narrative is not accurate. Over 60% of the women who have abortions already have kids. And there's something going on with the pregnancy that they need to have an abortion. There's molar pregnancies, there's miscarriages, there's all sorts of things that are happening. And also people who are trying to get pregnant with infertility medications and things like that. If it doesn't go exactly according to plan, abortion is needed. And in states where that's not usable, it's making it hard for people who want to get pregnant to be able to secure that healthcare too.
And are most of these people with that certain opinion? Because I guess, like I said, I'm not really educated on, the whole matter of it, but even the view that when I looked at it, it was more when a woman was raped by a man and she didn't want the child, if she was pregnant by the person that raped her, to have the right to be able to abort. And that was one of the views, I think, that the little education that I had on it was why,
Oh yeah.
men
And
really, shouldn't have a opinion on that necessarily, or shouldn't really have much of a stake on telling a woman that she should keep a baby that is from a man that raped her. And I think that like I said, that was one of the things. But
yeah, and there's definitely that case, and also there's definitely that out there. There's also cases of incest as well, that it's it's a no-brainer kind of thing. It's just that the opposition has painted this kind of slut shaming rhetoric out there that is making the procedure difficult.
Is it mostly more of like women organizations or something that put it together, or like you said, religion? How does that affect you to have a pastor tell you that you're going to hell because of your situation? Does it affect your faith, or even other women, for
Yeah.
other women to tell you that? Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of it comes from religious organizations. A lot of it comes from the more of the right-leaning folks. the thing is that with what happened to Hope, you know, when I reached for support, looking, reaching out for God, my hand was slapped. Whenever I went, my husband worked for the school district at the time. I worked for a nonprofit at the time. We couldn't afford a traditional funeral at a funeral home for her. So I reached out to 7 different churches to try to have her blessed, because we did manage to get a little tiny bag of ashes back. And all 7 said no, because she was an aborted baby. They would not pray over her ashes and would not have a service for her. So for me, for a long time, it pushed me away from God, because I was angry, and I was, it was bad enough that I was searching for a meaning behind what happened to an innocent, to my child with this disease, and why a God would make me go through that kind of thing. But the thing is that the more I tried to reach for God, the more I got my hand slapped away. So it was, it's taken me until now, almost 5 years later, for me to like start warming up to faith and things like that again.
So you would say you're more spiritual now versus religious?
Yeah, I've definitely gone more back towards my Jewish roots.
Okay.
And there, because of the Jewish faith does not condemn abortion the same way that other faiths do.
Okay.
And
That.
I do see more of a spiritual side of things now, but it's just, it's hard for a lot of people to, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth. It's hard for a lot of people to wrap their brains around those churches rejecting a grieving mom who is in her dire hour, and also reject a child. So
What are some things that help you get through?
Honestly, yeah, telling my story has helped a lot. Being able to write it down and release it into the universe, as I say, has helped a lot. It's like performing my own narrative therapy. Once that gate broke open, I was writing 15, 20 pages at a time. And it only took me 6 months to put the book out. It just
flowed.
Yeah, it just flowed. And, my kids really help, there's a little bit of sadness, a little twinge of sadness with all the happy moments right now, but it's okay. It's more of like a memory versus a flashback with them. And, spending time with my husband helps, and him and I coming back together in our grief, because he and I worked opposite shifts when everything went down with Hope. So we kind of had to grieve separately, which really sucked as a husband and wife. But coming back together and, being able to go through it with him has been really special and really helpful.
So what are some of the methods that you refer to the women that you try to help, or you look to help with your or with your nonprofit?
Yeah, sometimes people just need a sounding board. I'm feeling this way and no one else, understands what I'm going through. I'm feeling this way, and my my parents are sick of hearing me talk about it, or my husband's sick of hearing me talk about it. I need to talk about it, or I'm going to start screaming, literally. Walking them through processes that help alleviate some of that pressure, and alleviate some of the the silent screaming. I was asked at 2 months after Hope's death if I was over that already.
Mm.
And I was like, no. No, I'm not. And then I was asked the other day if I was over that already. And I said, judging by my book and by the fact that I'm starting a nonprofit to help other women around this, I'm not really over it,
Right.
but I'm just finding meaning in it. And I think that's what is going through those processes and those steps is going to help other people.
Right. And that's why I even ask how long did it take to find happiness versus getting
Yeah.
over it, because you never really get over it. But
No, there's women out there that are 80 years old that still remember the baby that they lost. It's just, the grief becomes part of you, but it changes color, it changes shape, it changes the way it affects you at different times.
I have a 80-year-old uncle that I talked to about a year ago. So he's probably about 81 now. And he remember my grandfather's death like
Oh, wow.
it was yesterday, and he
Yeah.
was 15 then, so
Mm-hmm.
yes. Even
Yeah.
I remember it like it was yesterday. And
Yep.
yes.
Absolutely.
So what are some of your goals for the nonprofit for the future?
Yeah, I hope by 2027 that we could serve 1,000 different women, or people, because there are folks that are, non-binary, transgender, that are out there that need the healthcare too, or are losing children. And also it's a family thing. It's not just the one carrying the child that loses the child when it happens. There's also a father, a grandfather, a grandmother, a brother, a sister that goes through it. But I hope by 2027 we'll have served 1,000 people.
Okay. So before we get ready to close things out, is there any other projects that you'd like to share, or links to your work or your book that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah. So one of the things that we are working towards right now is the 50 States Challenge. And that can be found on our website at fromthegreendesk.com. The 50 States Challenge is literally what we're doing is printing my book at cost and mailing it to every senator, every governor, every Supreme Court justice and president out there, and trying to get the message out and get the correct narrative in their hands. Not this crap that they've concocted, but someone who is real and tangible and putting it into their hands. I can't just hope that the universe will make them want to, read it. If we put it into their hands, it is their humanity that makes it if they read it or not. It is their humanity, their humanity that they make their choices on if they read it. So the goal is to get it into every senator and governor's hands. And with the 50 States Challenge, you can pick whatever state. I've got a map ongoing that I update. You pick the state that you want, and it's $30 to sponsor a state to get it sent to your politicians.
Okay. And I guess one last question. You mentioned you're going to start a podcast.
Yeah.
You have any questions about starting a podcast?
What is your preferred method of recording? Is it Zoom or is it any other ways?
So we use the Rodecaster Pro to record.
Okay.
It's a mixing device. It allows up to 4 mics, USB, telephone,
You can take phone
Bluetooth,
calls.
where you can take phone call. And this is what we're running through. It's by Rode is the company. This is also a Rode mic. These are the $100 mics that are for podcasting. So it's a pod mic. And that's why
Okay.
the sound it's pre-mixed. So we don't
Yeah.
pre-mixing anything. And we actually run the Rodecaster Pro into the computer. So it's flowing the audio into the video as well. So it makes the process a little
Yeah, you can use
convenient.
any method. We give people options between like Zoom or Google Video right now, but you can plug it into any device once
Yeah.
it's on the computer.
And it's about
Gotcha.
the console is about $600. And
Okay.
it allows you to get the record. I mean, the audio is always being recorded, and with it going into the video, it's kind of like you always have a backup because it's always getting the audio, and you know,
Yeah.
it puts it in the video for you. So
Yeah, and it's
that helps.
specifically for podcasting, so the sound is mixed and there's like noise cancellation and all kinds
Yeah.
of things that
So,
would help.
yeah, and it's a smart device.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. That was my main thing is I've done a couple of these and everybody seems to have a different method. So
That's the
just
method
kind of
we use, and we love it.
okay. All right. Awesome.
Really convenient.
Perfect.
Well, we'd like to say
Okay.
thank you to our listeners and our supporters. Thank you again, Kelsey, for your time and consideration,
Yeah.
and the information that you share with us is very valuable.
Yeah.
Yes,
And for the
Yeah.
listeners,
Thanks for having me, guys.
yes,
Thank
it's a
you.
pleasure.
And for the listeners, you can find the podcast at americangypsy.com. And you can find consistent self-improvement merch at luamlee.com.
And we also have some music under Classic Carpenter. That's KLACCIK, Carpenter, CARPENTA. And that's on Spotify, iTunes, Tidal, YouTube, all major platforms. Thank you again to our listeners. Thank you again, Kelsey, and consistent self improvement, everyone.
Peace.
Peace.